Welcome back to the channel. In today's video we are moving on to the next episode in my category breakdown series, and in this video we're taking a look at best editing. Now if you're new to this series, I'm going to put this video in a playlist with all of the other episodes. So far I believe this is episode 5 of the series, but basically all this is just every year for the last 3 years I've taken a look at every single individual category at the upcoming Academy Awards, and we just break the category down. We take a look at all 5 of the nominees, or 10 in the case of Best Picture, but we take a look at all of the nominees, we take a look at the individual people that were nominated alongside the film. So in this category we're taking a look at the editors of the films, and we just talk a little bit about their bio, some of their previous work and previous awards that they've won, and then at the end of each section, after kind of talking about why the film got nominated in that category, at the end of the section I just rank them all from my personal preference, 1 to 5, how I would probably vote in the category, and then I'll give you my prediction for how likely it is that I think they win the Academy Award on March 15th. Without further ado, let's take a look at the nominees.
F1.
Edited by Stephen Maroney. This is Stephen Maroney's 4th Oscar nomination. He won in 2001 for Traffic, and was also nominated in 2016 for The Revenant and in 2007 for Babel. F1 won Best Editing at the Critics' Choice Awards, and was also nominated at the BAFTAs and the American Cinema Editors Award. Now, right before I kind of jump into these sections, I always kind of think a little bit about what I'm going to say or how I'm going to, start each section. And I was just realized I was about to start the section by saying F1's the fun nomination here, because typically in editing you usually get maybe 4, if not all 5, but maybe about 4 Best Picture nominees, and then you get the fun one that's like the sports movie, the racing movie, something like that. It's kind of the fun nomination in the category. And that's how I was going to start, and then I remembered F1 is nominated for Best Picture as well. Now, this obviously, I think, as we were watching it all unfold, I guess there was always the chance that F1 was going to get that Best Picture nomination, but we always knew that this was the category that it was a lock-in, and at the time, early on in the award season, I think was kind of the front runner in the category. Now we'll talk about if that's kind of, changed at all, but just solely based off of the power of a couple of these below-the-line nominations between editing and sound and visual effects, I believe, between kind of that combo there for F1, it was enough to kind of propel it into that Best Picture race. And that's really a credit to those crafts, to those things, that it was good enough to, again, get it into that category. Now, F1, for the editing, the thing that really obviously is the most impressive is the racing scenes. It is the sports sequences. It is the for me particularly, there's multiple things. It's editing the scene to Hans Zimmer's score. Like, that obviously is a very kind of gets your adrenaline pumping and gets you real excited as you're watching the film. But also there's specific moments in the racing scenes that were just beautifully done. There is a couple one moment in particular where the screen jumps into a split screen, and you're watching both Idris and Pitt, as they're watching them race side by side on the screen, that I thought was just a really fascinating and a real fun way to tell the story, and to just really kind of get you into the excitement and get you into the feeling. Kind of, it feels like, we talked about yesterday in the cinematography video with One Battle After Another, how they kind of have the camera essentially right on the car during the hill chase scene, that really kind of gets you in that, feels like you're in the car as this is happening. F1 does the same thing with its editing, where there's multiple scenes, multiple sequences, where, again, everything, the editing, the sound, the visual effects, everything is all kind of put together to where you feel like you're in the race. It feels like you're, especially if you saw it in IMAX and or the D-Box, with the shaking seats. They do an excellent job of, again, just really kind of putting you in there and making it feel like you're in the car. And it's just really interesting to me that I think F1, again, maybe started as a potential frontrunner, and I think it still really has a chance, but I don't know if it's quite the frontrunner in the category anymore. For my personal rank, I'm putting F1 in 3rd, and for my prediction, I'm putting it in 2nd.
Marty Supreme.
Edited by Ronald Bronstein and Josh Safdie. This is Ronald Bronstein's 3rd Oscar nomination. His other 2 nominations are for also writing and producing Marty Supreme. This is Josh Safdie's 4th Oscar nomination. His other 3 nominations are for also writing, directing, and producing Marty Supreme. Marty Supreme was also nominated for Best Editing at the BAFTAs, the Critics' Choice Awards, and the American Cinema Editors Awards. And in a weird way, kind of like I was just saying with F1, Marty Supreme almost feels like it's also kind of the fun editing nomination here. That's not just, typically, this category for years has kind of been kind of just like a little mini Best Picture category where it's like you just take all the five frontrunners and they're all in here, and it's like it almost became a prerequisite. You had to have Best Editing in order to win Best Picture, or at least to be a real contender. And I still think that there is some truth to that, but I think also there's a couple of these where Marty Supreme, it doesn't feel like it's just in the Best Editing, as well as F1. Both of these films aren't just in the Best Editing because they're Best Picture nominees and that they need the nomination or anything. It feels like they're in here because their editing is really fun. It's really a big part of what makes both of these films exciting, I think is the best word. Marty Supreme, maybe a little bit more than exciting, more so nerve-wracking and intense and just taking your breath away as you're watching this because of the editing, the pacing of which these scenes are kind of strung together. Marty Supreme, the very first time I saw it, it was one of those that I think I had a general idea of how long the runtime was, but because of the way that the film was edited, and this is actually going to seem like almost kind of a weird thing. Typically when you're talking about films in Best Editing and you're talking about why the editing was good is because maybe it made a 3-hour movie feel like a 2-hour movie, and you're like, oh, it was edited so well. Marty Supreme, it's almost the opposite, where it's like you have this 2 hour 20 minutes, something like that, and to me it felt like it was 3-4 hours because of the way it was edited, with so much tension and nonstop action that you're just go 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 the entire movie, that for me I was just kind of like tense and kind of not worked up, but just kind of like on the edge of my seat for a lot of the film, that almost kind of made the film feel longer in a sense. So it's really kind of cool that it almost kind of flips what you think of maybe what good editing is. It almost feels like in a sense it kind of flips that, because it's the way that it's edited so frenetically and so fast paced. Again, it's maybe not for. I've said this a million times about Marty Supreme every time I've talked about it on the channel. It's maybe not a film for everyone, but because of what it excels at, and part of it is its editing, its pacing, its script, editing to kind of the chaos of the film. Because of how well that is done, for me, it's a film that it elevates it for me to where I truly just, again, love the film, and a big part of it is because of its editing. For my personal rank, I'm putting Marty Supreme in second, and for my prediction, I'm putting it in third.
One battle after another.
Edited by Andy Jurgensen. This is Andy Jurgensen's first Oscar nomination. He has collaborated with Paul Thomas Anderson 4 other times: Licorice Pizza in 2021, the short film Anima in 2019, the short film Junon in 2015, and Haim's Valentine in 2017. One battle after another won for Best Editing at the BAFTAs and the American Cinema Editors Awards. It was also nominated at the Critics' Choice Awards. And this is where you see where maybe F1 was maybe the frontrunner at the beginning. One battle after another has come in on fire. It has just kind of taken over this race, winning both, the BAFTA and then the American Cinema Editors Awards kind of back to back within the same week. Award season, it's like it takes forever, but at the same time it also goes so fast, and it's like you can't always remember exactly when things were, but it just kind of instantly just kind of took over and became the front runner, really. And not only just the front runner, almost like the runaway. It feels like this suddenly was a category that maybe was kind of up in the air a little bit. I don't think it's really all that up in the air anymore. One battle after another has really kind of taken over, and for good reason. It is a beautifully edited film. To me, this is one of those where I should have looked. I think this is the longest film in the category, and I've said this every year in my series. You always kind of, one of the things you need to do in this category is you need to look for the longest film. You need to look for the film that has the most editing. That is a big thing. There's always the two different kind of the approaches you can have to this category, is of whether you're voting for the film that has the most editing, or you're voting for the film that did the most with its editing, or like it was maybe the flashiest or kind of the most out there, the most obvious editing. One battle after another, its editing isn't always the most obvious, but what it is again, there is a lot of it because it is longer film, and it kind of has the same thing that Marty Supreme does, where it is, for a lot of it, especially for kind of like the second and third act, it's a lot of sequences one after another that just kind of keep coming, and then we move from this scene, we move to the set, we kind of bounce to the next thing, and it's the transition between those. It's edited very well to the point that you kind of almost get lost in the story a little bit, where you're not like thinking about like, oh, how long has this been, like, it's been a day or something like that, like you're kind of just watching it, and you're watching these characters, you're watching everything that they're going through, and it feels like you're just kind of like in there with them, with the characters. There's no kind of sense of how long this has all been going on or anything. Like, it feels very cohesive and feels very beautiful. The film also does an excellent job again in the editing. I talked about this in the cinematography yesterday. The sequence, the going up and down the hills at the end, the way that that's edited together, cutting through multiple different kind of POV. Like, we're looking at Chase Infinity's, we're looking at Willa's POV, then we're looking at Sean Penn. It's not Sean Penn. It's the I can't remember if he has a name, but one of the Christmas adventurers that's chasing her down. And then you've got Leonardo DiCaprio's character kind of behind them, and we're kind of cutting back and forth between the three of them. And that, for that one sequence, it's very well done. But I think another thing that the editing of One Battle After Another, what it does really well, is it ties together and it weaves together so many different characters into a very cohesive and easy to follow structure or story for the second and third act. Now, you're mainly focused mostly on Bob and Willa, Leo and Chase Infinity. You're kind of just bouncing between their two stories, but sometimes it's, I shouldn't say stories as much as just their perspectives on what's happening. But sometimes, maybe they're in the scene, but maybe you cut back and maybe this time it's a little bit more focused on Regina Hall. And then maybe, you do cut and you're going to have Sean Penn. He's a little bit more of a focus. Maybe you're going to cut and maybe Benicio del Toro, it's not really exactly told through his perspective or anything, but or I should say, like, it's still very obviously Leo is the main character, but it seems like you're seeing it a little bit more from Benicio del Toro's perspective. And so the way that this film kind of tells its narrative story while editing together multiple kind of point of views or multiple just their being different characters kind of being the focus of whatever is happening in the narrative at that time, I think is just beautifully done. For my personal rank, I'm putting One Battle After Another in first, and for my prediction, I'm putting it in first.
Sentimental value.
Edited by Olivier Boukouti. This is Olivier Boukouty's first Oscar nomination. He previously worked with Joachim Trier in The Worst Person in the World in 2021. Sentimental Value was also nominated for Best Editing at the American Cinema Editors Awards. And first off, apologies to Olivier. I'm sure I completely butchered his name. But talking about the editing here for Sentimental Value, now this is one of those that maybe kind of feels a little bit more as like a remnant of the, like I was just talking about, where it feels like the best editing category is just a mini best picture where you take the five and you kind of put them in there. That kind of feels like what Sentimental Value is in a sense, until you kind of you watch the film, and if you're kind of paying closer attention to the editing, I think it is one of the more, definitely not the flashiest, it's the least flashy of the editing of the film, but the way that this film is edited is still, again, kind of a little bit more subdued, but it's still beautiful. And the highlight for me in the editing of this is kind of the same thing that I was just talking about with One Battle After Another, where you have multiple different characters and multiple kind of point of views, and you're kind of weaving the story through those characters. Sentimental Value does the same thing. There's times where you're focused solely on Inge Ipsdottir Liljeus. There's times you're solely focused on Elle Fanning or Stellan Skarsgård. Or Renata Reinsva. Like, it's just, you're kind of focused on whatever the one character of the scene is, and it's almost like now the story's kind of being told through their perspective. And what's interesting is then you also kind of get the scenes of Stellan Skarsgård and Elle Fanning, where all of a sudden now the film is edited in a kind of different way, where all of a sudden now we were seeing, or kind of like in the scene with a young Inge Ipsdottir Liljeus' character when she was acting as a kid, where you get these moments where all of a sudden we're watching the film, and then all of a sudden now you're watching the making of Stellan Skarsgård's film, or the actual finished product of the other film at the beginning. And so the editing, the way that certain scenes are kind of edited together, I think is just really impressive. And again, without spoiling anything, because I don't want to spoil any of these films, because my hope is that you find this video and then it actually kind of encourages you to go find the film itself and watch it. Especially with Sentimental Value, there's a good chance that that someone maybe hasn't seen it. It's probably definitely the least viewed, I would say, out of all of these nominees. So I don't want to spoil the ending. So without spoiling it specifically, I will say that the way that the ending of the film is kind of shot in a way that is, a moment in Stellan Skarsgård's film with a certain character, and the way that it's almost like it didn't tell you instantly, but it's like if you're kind of paying attention, you can tell, okay, well, now we're just watching them filming the scene, but it's edited in a completely different way. It's almost like kind of this goes hand in hand with, I guess, the cinematography of the film, where the film has been shot a certain way the entire time, and all of a sudden we get to this moment where it kind of feels like it's shot a little bit differently. The way that is kind of edited, I think, is really, really cool. And, with Sentimental Value, there's just multiple moments. There is like the one that's kind of this like almost feels a little out there like when it happens, but like it still like at this point in the film feels like it makes sense. But it's like the scene where it's like all the faces kind of blending together, like with the light kind of shining and reflecting in different parts of like and it just like it's you're looking at one face, but it's constantly kind of switching like who you're looking at. It's like this really cool scene that's just part of that is just probably the flashiest that the editing gets in the film. Editing that whole sequence together is a whole lot of fun. And so sentimental value, it's maybe not the, like I said at the beginning, it's not the flashiest editing out of all of the nominees, but I still think it is really worthy of its nomination, and it is just a beautiful piece of editing. For my personal rank, I'm putting sentimental value in 5th, and for my prediction, I'm putting it in 5th.
And Sinners.
Edited by Michael P. Shaver. This is Michael P. Shaver's first Oscar nomination. He has collaborated with Ryan Coogler 5 other times on every film since Coogler's debut short film. Black Panther: Wakanda Forever in 2022, Black Panther in 2018, Creed in 2015, Fruitvale Station in 2013, and his short film Fig in 2011. Sinners won at the American Cinema Editors Awards and was also nominated at the BAFTAs and the Critics' Choice Awards. Now, I'm not going to act like I'm super kind of like an expert in the Ace Eddie Awards or anything. So I don't remember if this is exactly right, but I believe what it is I think Sinners won the award for like dramatic film, and then I think One Battle After Another, I think won editing for like a comedy film. So that's how you're gonna kind of getting 2 winners from there. Kind of like the same how like Golden Globe kind of splits up some of those categories. But other than that, it's kind of the big win for Sinners on the season. It was also getting nominated everywhere, which, you know, in and of itself is also a big win for the film. But, you know, for me, again, we're going to jump, when we're talking about Sinners, we're jumping straight to the juke joint. Like, that's where all the magic of the film, for me, happens. Obviously, there's a lot of beauty in the first, like, act of the film, but the highlight of all of these crafts really kind of happens in the back half of the film at the juke joint. And that's also where the editing is very well put together. There are multiple kind of action sequences, multiple tense sequences. I mean, this just joins the list of pretty much Marty Supreme and One Battle After Another, where part of the highlight, F1 as well, I absolutely should mention F1, where it's just a lot of tension is built through the editing, and Sinners does an excellent job of doing that as well, building the tension through that. I will say that for me, out of kind of all of the different things, all the different categories that Sinners is nominated for, editing isn't the one that stands out to me the most, which again can also be a good thing. Like, that is part of what makes good editing, is that you don't notice the editing, or it's just so smooth and flawless that you're not focused on like how the film is being cut up and edited. There are multiple scenes that sometimes you don't necessarily kind of think of as like an editing thing, where I guess this is before they get to the juke joint. I'm thinking of the scene where they're driving, Delroy Lindo's in the car, and he's telling the story about his past, and the way that it's edited in kind of like the screams and different kind of noises that you're kind of hearing, the ability to edit that is really impressive. The biggest thing, I guess, for me, and I guess probably for a lot of people, this is kind of the highlight, I guess, of the editing, again, is so much of editing kind of goes with sound design as well. And so just the entire I Lied to You sequence that, you know, kind of has the great, obviously the song, and then the score kind of plays a little bit before and after. You got the great cinematography of the whole scene. It's kind of almost, it reminds me, specifically the I Lied to You scene almost reminds me a little bit of like the Peach scene from Parasite, where that year that little sequence was like the big thing that was like kind of getting it all the attention, and kind of just perfectly like encompasses like everything that was great about the film. The juke joint, the I Lied to You sequence is kind of the same thing, where it kind of shows off everything. It's flexing all of the different crafts with everything involved. And kind of the last thing that I'll say on the editing for Sinners, that again don't want to say too much because it is the ending of the film, the how the film ends, where all of our characters' stories, where their stories end, the way that is edited together is very beautifully done, going from kind of this character's ending to this character to this character, and then getting into the post-credit scenes and seeing how those are kind of edited, those scenes, those sequences. There's a lot about the film that, again, kind of flashes and highlights kind of a lot of the flashy and the big kind of editing at the beginning, but then it kind of has like the sentimental value thing of kind of the intimate, beautiful type of editing in those last final moments. For my personal ranking, I'm putting Sinners in 4th, and for my prediction, I'm putting it in 4th. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know down below in the comments what you think of this category, how you would rank these nominees. Also, what film in this category are you rooting for to win at the Oscars in about a week and a half from now? And if you'd like to like this video and then subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future episodes in this, my category breakdown series, that I'll be uploading from now to March 15th, I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.